Hey, let me have a preliminary chat about Gulliver Jones. No, it's Lieutenant Gulliver Jones, his vacation, or Gulliver of Mars, which is a little bit more descriptive, and probably tags on to the whole John Carter of Mars thing. Um, I think, number one, I got recommended this because, like, oh, you're doing the Edgar Rice Burroughs thing. You should really check out Gulliver of Mars. Maybe the implication being that this is something that heavily influenced Edgar Rice Burroughs, or Edgar Rice Burroughs ripped off. I'm going to probably resist doing any of that in my review, other than to note some people think. But that, there seems to be a lot of this running around. There's an even earlier book by Gustavus Pope, Journey to Mars, which actually has the races divided into various different colors of races. So, these are obviously ideas that had been bouncing around, and Edgar Rice Burroughs, kind of probably through a kind of combination of talents and his own inventions, was able to be the one who kind of busted out, became the long running one. So I'm not gonna dwell too much on that. It is interesting, kind of comparing them, just because Edgar Rice Burroughs was writing pulp adventure novels, and they're pacey, and they have a very active hero, whereas Gulliver of Mars, which I think has a lot to recommend to it and is got a lot of fun stuff, does not have that driving plot. And even just the final chapters of it, I feel like it kind of died out. He rescued the princess, and they got back, and it's like, oh yeah, but the place is gonna fall, and oh yeah, Prince Hath realizes her erstwhile Martian lover is like, well, I've seen her future. She's gonna marry somebody else. She'll have kids. She'll have forgotten us. And indeed, Gulliver himself pretty much kind of comes to that same conclusion. As the thither folk, the barbarian woodmen are coming for him. He finds the carpet, and he gets whisked back to his own time, where luckily, they haven't signed him off for dead yet, and his fiancée is waiting there for him. And it's like, oh, she sort of half believes him, and he gets married, and that's the end of it. And it's like, it's not that great of an ending. And indeed, the final half of the book kind of drags a bit of him kind of slowly traveling out to find her, and then the very striking kind of the meteorite coming close to the planet, and it almost frying the planet, really kind of gave me. That's another where if you're inclined to say that Edgar Rice Burroughs maybe took inspiration from it, you could, just because the idea of the planet almost getting roasted, everyone being like exhausted and stuff like that, is very similar to the air plant on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Mars suddenly not working, and everyone almost expiring from lack of oxygen. Very kind of similar. And it's interesting, that's the end of the Princess of Mars, and it's very near the end of this one, which, if anything, it shows you there was a rich Martian fantasy tradition going on here, and Edgar Rice Burroughs was definitely mining that for his own stuff. But yeah, as I'd say, it's like, Gulliver is kind of like is kind of a cool kind of rugged American kind of guy, written by a Brit, but he's far less active than John Carter of Mars. John Carter of Mars is the hero of that book, whereas Gulliver is much more kind of a little bit more just kind of like happens to be there, gets caught up in the situations, isn't able to evince stuff in the end. So, it's there's that. I really like Anne at the beginning of this book, and there's the whole thing of kind of masculinity in both both Edgar Rice Burroughs and in Arnold. Edgar Lester Arnold. That this kind of thing of masculinity, and it's interesting that Gulliver spends the most part of the beginning of his book with the kind of the effeminate, decadent, dying race. I mean, they're both dying. There's that kind of decay kind of feeling of this used to be a great power, but they became decadent and wan, which I guess is maybe why you've got an American hero in both cases versus like maybe a Briton, because maybe that Briton thought like his own the European culture was decadent and effeminate. I really like the character of Anne at the very beginning of the book, who unaccountably just wanders off after a couple of chapters, and we never see her again, which is like really a shame, because I really enjoyed that character, whether she or he or they. I'm going to go with they. Gulliver, Anne says, "Oh, I'm not male or female," but Gulliver pretty much just goes, "Ah, no, you're a chick," and just calls her a girl from she and a woman and a girl from then on. It's like, he just decides, even though there's implications, there's a little bit of swordplay versus Anne's tiny dagger that makes you think is like, maybe Anne is packing something. But Gulliver never goes there. And even though that there's definitely is some sort of a little attraction. So I find they a very interesting little character. It's kind of a surprise in this book from 1905 of like, oh, here we have something of someone who is not gender conforming in a book from 1905, which, I mean, those characters existed long before our own age, but I think of it as a more modern kind of concept. But it's kind of that. I really like Anne. Haru is definitely kind of a princess. There is a little bit of kind of setup, the whole thing of that. Oh, at one point, there was contact between Mars and Earth, kind of the ancient Egyptian kind of thing, which was interesting. But that also kind of trails off. It's a very kind of dreamy kind of. The pace in it is not. It's a kind of a very kind of like a picaresque novel versus kind of the driving pulp novel, which maybe is kind of explains why it's not, the success that Edgar Rice Burroughs was, is that it very much feels like just of a piece of one of a piece, and as we go. So yeah, those are my initial thoughts on Gulliver of Mars by Edgar Edwin Lester Arnold. I'll get the name right before I actually do the review. More videos later.